Welcome once again to Talking Shenmue, where we break down each episode of Shenmue the Animation with members of Megavisions and the Shenmue community. This week, Marcin joins us once again, and for the first time on Talking Shenmue, we have James from GGDreamcast joining the show. Welcome, gentlemen. How's it going?
Hello.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
James, since this is your first time on the show, I want to talk to you a little bit about your personal kind of history and journey with Shenmue, because I know it's very important, to all of us, but each one of us has our own personal story to tell. So what's Shenmue been like for you personally?
Yeah, so I think my journey with Shenmue is probably the same as a lot of people, just a super fan that bought the game on launch day way back a long time ago now. We're all getting old, but yeah, just played it for those first 3 days nonstop till I got to the credits, and then of course instantly started my second playthrough with and this time I used the Prima guide. Do you remember Prima guides?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So going through page by page, making sure I got every event scene, every optional sort of thing that could happen, collecting all the capsule toys, all that. So yeah, just obsessed with the game right from day one, and then every year since then, I've played it at least once a year. Shenmue 1 specifically. I haven't played Shenmue 2 as much, probably about half. But yeah. So just a super fan, and love the game. I love the message of it. There's so much in there that's useful as far as living your life a certain way and all that. So yeah, really just dove in right from day one and never looked back.
Sweet. And you've been on the podcast, or we've had you on the Megavision show several months back, but for people who are jumping in at Talking Shenmue, may not have heard our previous show, what is GGDreamcast real quick? And you have made a lot of good Shenmue related content that fans of Talking Shenmue might want to check out too. So what do you have in store for that?
True. Yeah, well, it's since Shenmue is, like I said, probably one of my top 3 favorite games. It's always hard. It's tough to give those lists, but yeah, so obviously naturally I've made a lot of Shenmue videos on YouTube and written some articles about Shenmue on my site, but GGDreamcast is basically just a fan site for the Dreamcast, and sort of a place for Dreamcast fans to go and look at these things as if they're special artifacts, which is kind of how I sort of hold the Dreamcast and its games as sort of a special artifact of a certain time. And yeah, so just articles about the games, trivia about the games, and YouTube channel where we do playthroughs, some commentary, and some videos on things you may have missed, like the bad ending of Shenmue is a good one that I like, where Ryo dies basically. So yeah, so if you haven't seen that, check it out. But yeah, just a place to enjoy the Dreamcast and its games.
Yeah, it's an awesome site. When we get to the end of the episode, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that you've been doing here more recently. But that Shenmue bad ending was a really good episode. I watched it and I was like, "Holy crap! I never even knew that you could do this." That was awesome. Yeah. So you definitely
there were other videos about that on YouTube, but I wanted a lot of them are very old, so the image quality is pretty bad. Some of the audio is bad, so I just wanted to make one that was the absolute best quality you can get from a Dreamcast, and also talk about because a lot of the videos that showed that didn't have any context, like it was just sort of presented in a vacuum. The video that I made tries to give some context as to why that ending might have been put in the game, where it fits in the overall plot, stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, if anyone is watching and is interested, please check it out. Hope you like it. Yeah, and we'll just keep doing some Shenmue stuff. I'm in the middle of my big playthrough with commentary, so we're 6 episodes in, I think, and we've got about 6 more to do. So,
holy smokes! Yeah. We'll drop another link to that in the show notes. So if you're watching this, be sure to check the show notes to get some of those videos that we were just talking about for James. But awesome. I think it's time to jump into the episode, and let's discuss that a little bit now. So again, we're up to episode 3 now, right? This one's titled Yin Yang. I like to throw it your guys' way. We both watched, we all watched the episode now. What do you think is the main points that they're trying to tell with this episode, and What are some of the things that I guess stuck with you most watching the episode now that you've had a little bit of time to digest it?
I feel like the biggest things that I kind of see are and the constant things that I kind of try and point out is the differences between the game version and the video game and the anime version, because there are a number of things again in this episode that is done differently than in the game. For example, Rio's entrance to warehouse number 8. In the game, he goes there on his own, out of his own free will. And then in the anime version, he is going through the warehouse district, but then someone puts a bag over his head, and then he reappears in the warehouse tied up. And that is not something that happened in the game, which I thought was interesting, among other things. And the relationship dynamic between Master Chen and his son Guizhong is also more fleshed out in this episode too. Their facial expressions and all of that tell a bigger story than what they showed in the game, and I feel like that they do a really great job with it in this episode.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing that this anime has been able to do is that we talked about is flesh out some of those subtleties that the game just wasn't able to really adequately tell, whether it was for timing or whatever reason was. I'd be interested too to see if how much input that's Yu Suzuki trying to put in to that, to try to flesh those stories out himself, versus maybe it's some of the writers on the show as well. So James, what about you? What were some of the things that stuck out to you the most?
Well, let me just say that sort of Rio being kidnapped and brought to the warehouse is actually a lot better than if they had made the anime version of my playthrough of that part, because that sneaking mission is just fail, and 7 days goes by. So in the anime, he would just get caught, go home, sleep, go back, get caught. So
did you go so far as the homeless guy shows up and draws a map for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, pal. But yeah. So like Marston said, I think the changes to the Chen's relationship is interesting. I think the way that it sort of plays off of Rio's relationship with his dad is interesting. It makes me wonder if there's going to be more with Master Chen and his son, as far as in future episodes, which will be also interesting to see. But yeah, I think I like this episode overall. I think like the rest of the episodes, it's really moving things along. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here.
What are your overall thoughts so far, James? We're talking about this singular episode, of course, but overall so far, what are your general thoughts of the anime leading up to this?
I love it. I mean, the first episode blew me away. I was not sure what to expect. I was kind of apprehensive, a little bit, nervous about whether or not it would adhere to the source material or how it would be. And I was really surprised, or pleasantly surprised. It was just really well done. Pacing was good. I like the pacing. I like how it's moving things along. And I really like, and Marston said this in the previous episode of Talking Shenmue, that I like that they're remixing things. So even if you're someone like me who's played the game 23 times in the last 20 years, you're still going to see things that you don't expect, or things that are interesting. Like in episode 1, that Chai shows up in the dojo. That never happened in the game. And you certainly didn't see Chai anywhere close to that early in the game. So yeah, I just like that. I like how they're changing things up, making it interesting even for old fools like me, but also staying true to the material in a very granular way. It's really nice to see.
100%. And in this, in this episode, it seems like they stick really close to some parts of the source material, and so even some of the dialogue, it seems like too, from the game. It's still a little hazy for me, because I have not certainly played through the game as many times as you guys have. I certainly don't try to do it annually, which is crazy, but I do feel like I need to go back and play through Shenmue 1 just to get refreshed on some of what's going on in the game and how it kind of compares. But I'm glad I have you two gentlemen here with me today to be able to remind me of when we deviate from some of those things.
I gotta tell you though that last episode when I said I feel like replaying it, I actually did replay the first game yesterday because I realized I was at 97% completion on the trophies, and the only one I was missing was a sparring match with Fukusan, which is like early on in the game. So I just booted it up and played the Charlie section just to get the 100% completion because it was like bugging me.
Does that have a platinum trophy?
What's that?
Does that have a platinum trophy on a PlayStation?
It does. It does. When you get all of the trophies, which is honestly fairly easy to get them. Yeah, your platinum trophy is, hey, you got all the trophies. So there's
right. No, I love platinum trophies. I'm one of those people that likes to chase those. But when I played Shenmue 1 and 2 HD, I played it for about 25% through Shenmue 1, and then I was like, why am I not just playing this on Dreamcast? So I just booted up the Dreamcast and went through it on there. I think they're different experiences, but anyway.
But let's jump into this episode now. As the episode begins, like we said, it's titled Yin Yang. We begin at Bailu Village once again with Shenhua walking with her pet goat once again. And I really wish that this goat had a name, because I feel like this is the third episode now that we see the goat. It's a character now, and it needs a name. It's by far the cutest damn character we have in the series so far. And I think that maybe include the cat. She's reciting once again the poem that they continually beat on, you know, in the beginning and end. So it's as she's walking, Ming Yang greets her, "Hey Shenhua, how's it going?" And she's just completely ignores him, continuing to recite the poem. And it goes to the next scene where she's at the well getting some water, and Ming Yang's there again, and they're starting to talk about the poem. And I thought this was a really kind of funny scene. It's really quick, but it's funny because it adds a little bit more character to some of the NPCs that you see later on in the series. But he continues to recite the poem, basically showing her that he knows it as well. And he continues, "Out of a distant land in the east, from across the sea he shall appear." And she asks him, like, who is he? Who does he think that he is from the poem? Because the children, I guess, keep asking her about it. And it seems like he gets a little, like, flustered or jealous here, because he's like, oh, yeah, well, whoever this guy is, he'd have to be crazy to cross the sea just to visit our stupid village, or our village. That's just ridiculous. And then I thought it was funny. Then after that, after obviously getting mad, he kind of invites her out on a date. He's like, oh, by the way, you know, tomorrow night, this other village is having a festival. You want to come check it out? And she kind of still just not even really paying attention to him, kind of looks off into the distance. And I kind of thought that maybe she's looking out into the east and wondering to herself, like, who is he and when he might show up. Did you guys have any thoughts on this little opening scene right here?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was a funny, kind of charming little moment that made me laugh. I think it's funny, Shenhua's sort of, you know, she's doing that anime stare where she's just staring off, and like if you did that in real life, people would just think you're insane. Like somebody says something to you and you're just like, yeah. It's just like, what are you doing? You all right? It's
funny because Ryu basically does that this whole episode. It's funny because it does a lot from the game, and I don't know if that's something that they're trying to like beat on in the game, but someone will say something to Ryu and he's just always confused, it seems like, and he's just like, poem or you know, a teach shop, and it's just kind of funny. So
maybe she was just like wondering what she was gonna have for dinner that night. Like she could care less that he invited her out to a festival. But yeah, I thought, it's just those kinds of things. It's just add another layer to, like, NPCs or people that might be in the game, but they have, you know, even if it's like a brief interaction that gives them more, you know, more depth than they've had before. So yeah, another great just little introduction to the Guilin area in Shenmue.
For sure. So then after that, we jump into the opening credits, and we're now into the official first scene of the episode, and we're in Bar MJQ. Do we ever know what MJQ stands for in the game? Did they ever explain that at all, or is it just one of those kind of
I know
generic?
It's in the game, it's the MJQ Jazz Bar, but I don't remember if those initials stand for anything.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Yeah, they're.
I'll get my Prima guide.
Oh yeah, check the Prima
Yeah,
guide. Consult the guide.
Live research.
And so we see this bar. It's kind of dimly lit. We see the neon light from bar MJQ, the sign, and we hear a group of men talking in kind of a corner. They say Charlie got his ass whooped. Who was it? The Chins? And one of the men say, no, it wasn't the Chins. It's just some little punk that thinks he can mess with us. And we see a scene of Ryu kind of kicking their butt the day before, or the Charlie's guys. And this man, his name's Terry. He says, kids got balls. And here I thought the Chins were the only ones crazy enough to challenge the Mad Angels. And as he says this, we kind of see his face. And he's this really large man, piercings cover his face, got these like really cool clothes on. I don't know how to explain him, but he's just this really badass looking dude. And you could tell right away that you probably don't want to piss this guy off. And it looks like, Ryu already has some people, some bad people, their attention, and now it looks like got this Mad Angels group, possibly after him as well.
For one, I didn't realize that Terry would go so far as into like the Dobuita area and just kind of hang out at that jazz bar, because in the game I always thought they were just kind of restricted to the harbor area. And that's kind of where they hung out. So I thought it was kind of interesting for them to have it as a little extra scene. And yeah, in the game he was very intimidating when they first introduced him. I watched the Japanese dub, so I don't know what the English dub voice actor sounds like, but in the game it was, he had like a deep, low, gravelly voice. I thought like he must be at least like 12 feet tall in the game, because he just, I don't know, he looked massive from the way they angled him in the game. And yeah, I'm excited that they introduced him.
Okay, we'll move on to the next scene, and this is we see Ryu walking down the street, and we hear Yamagishi. He's thinking back to the conversation he had with Yamagishi maybe the day before, of telling him to go to the pottery store where the owner can read pretty much all forms, both new and old, of Chinese. And he gets to the Rasia China shop. As he gets there, he sees that the store is closed. He hears someone call to him from behind, and he turns around, and it's the young boy from the previous episode who he got his soccer ball back from Charlie and his thugs. Apparently his name's Gawain. Yeah, he basically is like, hey, why are you here at our house? And next scene, he brings him into the China shop, and he introduces Ryu. And Ryu shows her the letter, says that he's hoping that he can help her read it. She takes a look at it for a minute and immediately says that these are mirror characters, and she takes them over to the mirror and begins to read contents of the letter. It says, beware those coming, they seek the mirror. And then it also says, contact Master Chin for help if the situation gets dire, signed Yuan de Zhu. And then she says there's another note on the back, Father Heaven, 9 dragons, Mother Earth, comrades. I mean, I got so excited when I heard that. That was great. As a longtime fan of the game, right? And she says that she doesn't know what it really means. And then Ryu asks if there's anything else. And she looks and she says there's some numbers written in an old script, and they could be a phone number. And she begins to say the numbers 046. And then we see Ryu basically outside at a tobacco shop calling, and we see him using the rotary, the rotary dial. It's great. I love that. And then this basically is like just right out of the game. It seems like he rings it. The man says hello. He's like, Father Heaven. And Ryu doesn't really know what to say at first. And again, kind of like I said, he just kind of repeats it a little bit. And then he realizes, he's like, okay, I have to say back the lines from the thing. So he replies 9 dragons. The guy says Mother Earth, and Ryu once again replies comrades. And the man says warehouse number 8. And warehouse number 8, Ryu says, and then the guy, I guess, gets suspicious of Ryu, and he asks who this is, and Ryu doesn't really know what to say, so he's like, sorry, is this a Chin residence? And then the line clicks dead. And Ryu then talks to the person at the tobacco shop, and she tells him that I guess you could call 104, the helpline, and then they tell him the line is coming from a number at the warehouse district, right?
Basically in the harbor, yeah, and that's where they just kind of, take him there. Yeah, in the Japanese version of the anime, I don't know why in the English, when they dub it in English in the bottom, instead of comrades, they put common allies. When I was watching the anime, I just thought that was an interesting localization choice, because I believe even in the game, if you play it in Japanese, it still says comrades as a translation. So I just thought that was a small curious thing. But yeah, like that whole section is almost identical to what actually happens in the game. The old lady, also says, why don't you use the phone book and all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, we then see him go to the harbor, which is where shit really picks up in the game, and it gets much more interesting at this point.
In the next scene, we arrive kind of at the warehouse district or whatever. The bus pulls in, and this is something I love the attention to detail that the animators take in the game or in the anime, because in the game, Ryu never seemingly sits down on a bus ever. He's just always standing in the aisle, and we see the bus stop, doors open. Once again, Ryu's just standing right there, ready to get off the bus. Super dangerous. Does not follow the rules, this lad. But anyway, so he gets off, and immediately he just starts walking, and he hears a man cry out. It's basically he's getting kind of mugged by a group of guys, and I thought this next line was hilarious. And I got to ask you guys, because I can't remember if this line is actually taken verbatim from the game, because I thought it was hilarious. I'll read it off and then get your guys' thoughts. So Ryu arrives and says, "Hey, knock it off." And Goro asks, like, "Who are you?" And then Ryu just responds, "Mugging is uncool. It's out of style, guys." And then one of the thugs recognizes Ryu from the martial arts tournament. He's like, "Hey, that's the guy from Yokosuka High." And it's just a really crazy scene. Ryu then goes in and frees the kid, and they run off, and then there's a fight. But is this close to how that plays out in the game as well? And that line I thought was hilarious. "Mugging is uncool. It's out of style, guys." Like, that's gonna.
In the game, he says, in the English version, Corey Marshall says it as, "Don't you know that blackmail is way uncool?" And that's how he says it. That's basically what he says in the game. The guy getting mugged, this is a little more detailed how they did it in the anime. In the game, you just see him kind of on the ground, I guess. A little less detailed. And then Goro's voice, I don't know how he is in the English dub of the anime, because I didn't watch the English dubbing of this episode. But yeah, he's very goofy and super just over exaggerated and just
Goro's
like
goofy.
eccentric.
Come on.
Yeah, he is goofy.
No way.
Yo, dude.
Yo, bro.
Did you guys feel like they did his
love
hair
Goro.
right in this scene right here?
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of extra inches on his pompadour, but I think they did a good job.
I was waiting to see Goro in the anime. I wanted to see what his voice was going to be like specifically, and I don't want to say I'm disappointed, but could have been a little goofy.
It was. I did listen to the dubbed or watch the dubbed version. And I've been kind of jumping back. And I have to say, like, I thought the English voice actor did a pretty good job. I have to go back and now listen to the Japanese and kind of compare the two and see if I can notice that if the Japanese one sounds a little goofier, and if they're trying to go for that would be interesting.
I mean, the game obviously takes the cake with goofy ass voice acting for this character specifically. Yeah, you have to rewatch it, but all his scenes were always super comedic, and he just walked very exaggerated, and yeah, so I feel like it's missing a little bit in the anime, but
yeah, I love in the anime though how he goes from being a tough guy to instantly like submissive in the most exaggerated way possible. He's like, yes sir, and then it's exactly how he is in the game. It's so funny in the game. I always thought it was funny because he goes from being sort of like a very minor antagonist to all he wants for the rest of the game after that first fight is to impress Ryo and like be Ryo's buddy. He's like always trying to help him, he's giving him advice. It's just great.
Yeah, it's like the dynamic you see a lot in the Yakuza games too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like my Aniki now, like I need to impress him. I'm gonna be submissive to him, and I'll do whatever I want, whatever I can to impress him.
fade into the next scene where we're back in kind of the warehouse industrial area. It's at night now, and Ryu is lurking in the shadows, just waiting for an opportunity to get by that little security shack right there, where the security guard works. And I'll say this part in the game like really frustrated me in my first few playthroughs because I couldn't get past it. And I think was this a sneak scene? Was it a QTE? I can't remember it in the game.
Sneaking.
How does
it was a stealth area where you couldn't get seen by all the guards as they were patrolling through their little grids or whatever.
I remember the one part very, very specifically because as Ryu he waits for the security guard to kind of like leave the window, and that's when he knows that's his time. So he's kind of sneaking past the window, and then the phone rings.
You're talking about when the flashlight drops. The flashlight is a quick time event. Yeah,
that is a QTE because I remember that scene because the phone rings and Ryu kind of gets scared. He hits his head on the little counter, and then the flashlight drops. He catches it successfully, and the security guard picks up the phone, and then Ryu kind of continues on. But and so I guess if is that an instant fail at that part? If you fail that QTE, does it let you kind of like retake it, or do you got to basically start at the beginning?
I've never failed that, so I don't know.
Wow. Okay, Mars, I know you failed
you have to redo that specific scene. I think it's kind of like how when you meet Charlie and he's behind that curtain or whatever you want to call it, tattoo parlor, you have to redo that if you mess up. So
I was terrible at the QTs in this game, and so I'll freely admit it. I was not good. So it's taken me a few times to get through those.
You should know what happens if you keep failing. You should know what happens.
I know.
It's like I said, it's been so long since I played through Shenmue 1. I did do Shenmue 2 not too long ago. It was a couple years ago. I played through that with Scotty, but yeah, it's been a minute since I played through. So this is good for me because it's making me remember stuff. So as we go through, I do remember a little bit of things. So Ryu, as he successfully gets through, he thinks he's in the clear, only to find a large like burlap sack waiting for him on the other end. He gets like thrown into a sack. And we see him
tagged him.
Yep,
was
hands
like, bad.
tied behind his back, got rope around him, and we see.
Honestly, that point, I didn't see the point in that because he says warehouse number 8. So if you're trying to say you're bagging him to say, "Oh, we don't want you to see where we are," he already knows you're in warehouse number 8. Or you're just gonna like take a paintbrush and change it to like number 2 or something. Like I felt like that was a little too much, but.
So as we're in now the warehouse, Ryu kind of scans around and he sees just kind of like pottery, antique furniture kind of all over the place. And we see he's a crate with the words Zhufeng Company labeled on it. And as he's sitting there, Master Chin enters the room. He apologizes, for the uncivilized reception that they've given him. And Ryu tells him his family name and that he has a letter from Yuan Zhu. Okay, so as Ryu is telling Master Chin about the letter, Master Chin looks at it and he says basically there's no mistaking that that's Yuan Zhu's handwriting. He basically says then that Yuan Zhu was involved in facilitating a transfer of an item basically, and if his father had some connection to that mirror, then Ryu basically realizes that they're kind of talking about one of the mirrors that he's seen. Ryu at this point has only seen the dragon mirror, which Londi has stolen from him. And Ryu tells them that, basically that mirror, I've seen a mirror that you're talking about. It was taken by Londi who killed my father. And Marcin, what else has like happened in these events? Can you talk through the rest of this?
So it kind of also briefly goes into what happens when you have both mirrors, and he brings up Chiyo and Landy and them being part of the Chiyo men. And one interesting thing, as he's talking, that you kind of see within the shot of the scene of a antique plate with a design that is actually what Chiyo looks like in mythological history. So Chiyo is a real Chinese mythological king. They don't really know when exactly people first started talking about this person and it being, but they think it's from the Dongyi Miaoerman dynasty. And in today's kind of history, when people talk about Chiyo, they describe him as the god of war, and he's actually one of the three founding fathers of China. So he's a big kind of looming subject in the Shenmue games, and I think that was one of the things that I was interested in learning more about and seeing as the game and the story progresses. And it in Shin Megami Tensei, in those series of games, they also have Chiyo as a demon that they draw him out as like this green bull-like figure, and he has weapons on all of his arms, and I just feel like that is an interesting discussion point that's been talked about for the past 20 years, and like on the Shenmue Dojo forums and all that kind of stuff, and also kind of if you guys remember the Shenmue Online game that was announced in 2002, 2003 or so, that trailer introduces Ryo using like ki energy, like actual like blasting a Kamehameha wave or something like that. And that was teased in the trailer. And a lot of people thought the progression of Shenmue after Shenmue 2 was more magic stuff. And it's yet to be determined if that we will ever get there. In Shenmue 3, it's a little iffy about that, but yeah, that's one thing that I've been consistently interested in for the series going forward, is how they take this concept that they talk about, and if it actually turns into something more magical, or if it's more of a metaphor, and it lowers it more down to a human human problem or human issue. It's the greed of man and that kind of stuff. That's the monster of Chiyo, and it's not necessarily a literal beast. So
have you seen the there was a sort of making of Shenmue video that came with the Virtua Fighter 3 TV release in Japan? Did you ever see that video?
I vaguely remember that. I remember the concept arts and stuff. Also, during the game developers conference, when Yu Suzuki was kind of talking about, I believe it was Shenmue, and they had like major concept arts for different parts of the series from beginning to end, and there was a lot of interesting imagery.
There's this video. It's an interview with Yu Suzuki, and it's like a making of Shenmue sort of mini documentary that came with Virtua Fighter 3 TV. I just uploaded the whole video with English subtitles on my YouTube channel. But in that, like, you see some really interesting CGI cutscenes from things that we haven't seen in the series yet. Like, there's Shenhua using, like you talked about, Marcin, using like magic to like sort of force push people away from her. And Landi is like fighting Ryo and Shenhua, which obviously, we haven't really seen that. So there's a lot of interesting little snippets. Like if you go through that trailer at the beginning of that interview, scene by scene, you can really see some stuff that it as a big Shenmue fan, it makes your mind just go crazy. Like, oh my God, what is this? Like, what, how do they have these special powers? Like, what is this giant statue? There's a scene, I think, where Ryo's like hanging off of a train going across a mountain.
I remember that.
Just amazing looking. And anyway, I hope we get to see what those story beats eventually turn into. But yeah, speaks to what you said about the mystery of the Chiyu men and the magic aspect.
Yeah, because this is, I think, maybe one of the second or third times they do reference some sort of supernatural or paranormal, magic or anything like that. And we see at the beginning, we saw a little bit of that right at the beginning of when the episode or the whole series began, right? In episode 1, when him and Shenhua in the cave and they see the two mirrors, all of that.
Yeah, that's the ending of Shenmue 2.
That was Shenmue 2. did they show the sword in that scene too, or is that
I don't think so.
Not in the anime.
Because
No.
that
It just showed the fire.
okay,
Yeah, that also
like a sword
like
levitating
that
or
is not
something,
normal.
right?
Yeah, I forget that thing floats at the end of 2. So obviously, like I remember vividly, when I was talking about it, like, oh my God, whatever it was 15 years ago, and a lot of people would say it's like that was some Final Fantasy shit happening at the end of Shenmue 2 with the sword just floating in the air, and then it says, the story goes on, and then I was like, you can't end it like that, you motherfuckers.
Oh, they did
And they did 15 years
for a
later.
long time.
And I expected that's when we're gonna start seeing like more of this going into the series and be, like it's gonna see a lot more of the mythical stuff bleeding into reality. Didn't really see that too much in Shenmue 3, but we'll see how it plays out. I would love to see some of that, more in the anime though, for sure. I guess the conversation basically ends with them coming to the assumption that Landi's now after both mirrors, and that Ryu has to find the mirror before Landi's gonna to find it, right? And then we do get a little bit of that kind of interesting interaction between Guizhong and Master Chen. And that's something that you said earlier, James, that kind of spoke out to you. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that in this scene right here?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. It was Guizhong and his father, Master Chen, had this sort of back and forth where he calls him, Guizhong calls Master Chen father, and Master Chen sort of reprimands him instantly and says, don't call me father. You can't call me father until we're out of the criminal underworld. You're in my organization. You can't call me father until we're out of this world that we're in, which is, like he says, I think, a criminal underworld. And then he adds, so I saw that and I was like, oh, that's kind of brutal. But then he goes even further. Master Chen says, and that day won't happen until we're both dead. And I'm just like, oh my God. Okay, so that's pretty brutal. And in the anime, they have Guizhong sort of, doing the anime intense stare at his dad, like, oh man, this is terrible. I don't have a father. And so later on, that relationship is expanded when Rio has a conversation about what his next steps are, and Master Chen sort of rejects him and says, like, I can't help you. Rio says the line something like, what would you do if it was your father? And that really speaks to Guizhong. He sees how the relationship between Rio and Rio's dad, how strong it was and how important it was. And I don't know where it's going to go in the anime from here, but you're sort of getting that foreshadowing that simply by virtue of the strong relationship, that's going to change how Master Chen and Guizhong deal with Rio and help him later on. So interesting difference from the game. The game didn't have any sort of fleshing out of that relationship at all. And the whole Master Chen thing was kind of weird in the game because he was supposed to be like the leader of this organization. You never see anyone else. It's just Guizhong and Master Chen. And
where's all the other guys?
Yeah, it was like a two-man operation for smuggling art across, the country, and you never see any additional, bodyguards or people like that. And Chen, I don't know, Master Chen also seems just like such a nice guy in the game. I don't know, like I feel like
in the game, I didn't get the impression that he was a criminal at all in the game. But in the anime, they make it very clear.
I just like, he just likes pottery and antiques, and that was
I was like,
he just live in this warehouse.
He's just an importer of Chinese art. But
yeah.
Anyway, I guess that's us being naive kids when we were playing Shenmue for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll call him out too here in a little bit. Another character does, but I want just to quickly point out that there is a Sega Saturn spotting in this episode. I don't know if you guys spotted that.
I missed it. No, I want to see
it.
So
it's in the next scene here, and it shows Ryu basically searching all over his house looking for any clues, like looking for the Phoenix mirror.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so as he goes like searching in the dojo, he falls off a stool and falls to the ground. And Fukusan Inisan come in and ask him what what he's doing, and they're kind of like bandaging him up. And as they're bandaging him up in that room, you see on the TV a little Sega Saturn right there, and
Oh, I gotta
it
see
looks
this. I'm
adorable.
scrolling to it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was in that room where it normally was in the game, where you have to open the drawers. There's a TV, and you open the drawers at the bottom, and there's a Sega Saturn, and then he puts it on top of the TV, because in the game, for those of you who don't know, you can purchase or win in a raffle in the stores 3 Sega Saturn games that are they're just essentially, or 3 Sega games. I don't think they were on the Saturn, that you can play at home instead of going to the arcade and playing those. So I think it was Hang On,
Space Harrier.
Space Harrier, thank you, and I forgot the other one.
No,
But
I think there's only 2. I
oh,
think it's just Hang On and Space Harrier
I think
in
you're right.
Shenmue 1.
Yeah, and then this whole scene too, finding the mirror scene, the way that he goes about this whole scene is different from the game, because in the game, for one, Fukusan doesn't just like start cleaning and takes like the wallpaper off. He's like, hey, there's these 2 weird recessed imprints in the wall for some reason. Like, this was something that Ryo kind of discovers himself as he's looking for, you know, any sign of where the mirror might be. The sword, I believe he found in the residence, but in the game, it's in the dojo in a wooden box that requires a key that you find in his father's room. So they kind of, again, remixed it a bit and did it their own way, which I was perfectly fine with. But yeah, I totally forgot about that Sega Saturn Easter egg.
Yeah, no, that was really neat. We'll kind of condense the rest of this, some more of this stuff here, because there's not a lot that happens in the. He basically, the next scene, he meets up with no, he goes to the antique shop. He has to get the I guess is it like a hand hilt or
Sword.
something, or
Yeah, sword hand guard.
Yeah,
that
it's
has
family
the
crest.
Right, the family crest on it. So he goes and gets that. The guy Kiezo, he's the one that basically says, "Hey, watch out for Master Chin, because that dude is like dealing all sorts of like illicit stuff. Like, don't get involved in like Chinese operations. Be careful." And so he gets that. He's walking home, and that's when Guizong meets up with him, and like for no reason just starts attacking him, and just starts like Ryu. He's so fast, Ryu could barely like evade or just block anything, and he basically is just saying that he's testing him. He wants to see how well he can handle himself, because his dad, Master Chin, has put him on security detail, and he basically is like, "Hey, don't worry, you're not gonna die on my watch, buddy, but I just want you to let you know that I could kill you if I wanted to." We're back at the Hazuki dojo now, and that's when, Marcin, you were saying that Fukusan is about to tell him about, hey, by the way, we've had these weird recesses here where it looks like things could go for years, and I never knew where it was. But before that, they had a quick training kind of like scene where I thought was kind of funny, because Ryu beats Fukusan up pretty easily, but then Fukusan's like, "Hey man, it seems like your moves are growing sharper recently," and Ryu's like, "Yeah, but man, it's nothing compared to these guys." And he kind of flashes back to getting beat up by Chai, Lan Di, and Guizong, and it really, I talked about it the last time. I think my phone just is talking to me, but I talked about it in the last episode, and I think Ryu is really kind of coming to understand that from a martial arts standpoint, he still has a long ways to go. He's finally getting involved with people who are masters of martial arts, and he's realizing, like, he has a long ways to go still. What did you guys kind of think about this scene?
I mean, I feel like it definitely, he felt like big fish in a small pond, and he could kick everyone's ass in the neighborhood. But I was also kind of a little worried that they were going to make him like OP, and there was this kind of, I almost thought there was this kind of aura of like, oh, they're gonna make him seem more, I don't know, special and all that kind of stuff early on. Because for me, and I mentioned that before, is that it seemed like he beat Chai, or like he really dented him pretty easily, and they just were introduced like super early on, like first episode, and I thought they were going to keep that level of strength throughout. But I'm glad they kind of reeled it in and explicitly said, hey, you still have a long way to go. you know, you got your ass beat by Chai and Landi, and you know, like it's not like he's Superman. So I'm glad that they, you know, they reiterated that point for sure.
Did you have anything in that scene you wanted to add in there before we moved on?
Well, I think speaking to what Marson was talking about, I think they're definitely showing Ryo's vulnerability after the first episode. You know, that first scene where he was in the high school martial arts tournament, and you know, he does that. I don't know what you would call it, some sort of like deadly blow on the opponent, and he's like, "Don't feel bad. No one's ever landed a hit on me." You know, it's just so intense. And yeah, since then they've definitely shown that, you know, people have landed punches on him since then. So
basically, this is the scene now that Ryo realizes that, oh, there's like a recessed portion that he could put this family crest in, and then the sword. He puts them both in. They both fit perfectly, unlocks a secret door, and he goes down into what I thought immediately when I saw this was like, that I would never go into my dad's secret door that has like leads to a creepy ladder that I would only imagine to some sort of like sex dungeon or something like that.
Never look at your dad the same way again.
I would be like, I'm afraid to find out what is down there, Dad. But thank God it's nothing bad. It's just a lot of antiques. It's like filled with like cobwebs and dust. You could tell no one's been down there in a very long time. But laying in the middle, you know, in the middle of the room, atop of a, you know, small table is the kind of like a little wooden box that has the Hazuki crest on it, and he opens it up, and sure enough, it is the Phoenix mirror. And it was kind of cool, and I don't remember if this is how it played out in the game, but as he picks it up, like the gem on it shines onto a kind of onto the wall or a shelf where there's a bunch of papers and there's a photo sticking out, and Ryo picks it up, and on the back it reads Bayou Village. He turns it over, and there's a young photo of his father Iwao with another man who he doesn't recognize, but I wanted to ask you guys, like, was this similar how it went on in the game at all, or how'd that work out?
Not really. This scene was much different than in the game. In the game, you go in the basement and you just explore around. You pick up all these different things. There's some Chinese medicine. There's scrolls. There's actually some moves in there move scrolls that add to Ryo's arsenal, I guess, of moves. But yeah, you find these things sort of just by exploring and looking around. And then Ryo looks, and there's some grooves on the floor, which in very video gamey fashion, you know, there's grooves on the floor. That means we can push something. So you push something out of the way, and it reveals a patch in the wall, which then you go over to the other side of the room. You get an axe. You come over. Ryo smashes through, and inside a secret compartment inside the secret room is the Phoenix mirror. So it's double hidden, but definitely sped it up for the anime.
I think one other thing that, like, when I was exploring this area in the game when I was younger, I kept kind of always thinking about like where his mother was in all of this, and like just kind of the background of her. I remember opening some of the drawers and seeing like these beautiful combs and these kinds of things that were just kept in this basement, and I thought, you know, maybe they would talk more about his mother, and I'm curious if they will ever kind of bring that up in the anime, or maybe the main story is because it's between him and his father. That's more of a focus than, you know, it's not a necessary detail, but I just thought
I know in the anime when they show the shrine, there's a tablet for Ryo's dad who's recently passed away, and then there's also a tablet for Ryo's mom. So they at least, you know, acknowledge that Ryo did have a mom.
Yeah.
But
before we jump into our final scene here, I want to ask James, because on the back of that picture that Ryo picks up, it does say Sega Film on that. Was that an actual real product that Sega ever made, or was that just a promotional thing that they put in the game?
No,
it's Sega Film.
I think everything in Shenmue was just branded as Sega, like the you know, Sega Color and Sega Film is definitely a sort of call out to Fujifilm and Fujicolor, which was, you know, the biggest film producer back then, even bigger than Kodak. For people that don't know, I have a background in photography, and so I know a little bit too much about this stuff. But Yeah, yeah. So I think everything was just branded in the game as, you know, Sega notebook, Sega pencil, Sega tape players, you know, all that. So
Right on. You know, I saw that. I was like, if anyone's going to know that, James is going to be the guy.
I did like that they carried it to the anime. I thought that was very cool. You know, somebody making the anime looked at the back of that card in the game, that photo. I was like, all right, we'll put this in. So.
There's so much attention to detail,
Yeah,
for
good
real.
detail.
It really is. And there's some scenes I'll have to say, especially when they went into the antique store earlier in the this episode. I just thought it was beautifully, you know, I guess painted and drawn. I almost thought there were some certain scenes where I was like, man, that almost looks like just a photo, and it just is like just real pretty art and everything. So yeah, the attention to detail to include things like that is kind of a testament to how well they're doing with that in this anime. But let's jump into the last scene, because this is kind of where it all kind of climaxes for this episode. Ryu is back at warehouse number 8 in Master Chin's, you know, weird abandoned a warehouse that only him and his son hang out at. Ryu hands over the Phoenix mirror to Chen, and he tells him that Yuanda Zhu once told him that when the dragon and the Phoenix meet, the gates of heaven and earth will open, and Chiyu will resurrect itself on Earth. He says Chiyu is, you know, basically what Marston has already told us. He basically explains who Chiyu was.
Yeah, I jumped the gun on the scene. I thought it was in the previous scene, but it was in this one. So my bad.
No, that's fine. But as he's explaining this, Chai basically attacks from above, and jumps on Ryu, sends him crashing into a bunch of boxes, and he grabs the Phoenix mirror. And he's like, basically now Master Land's gonna love me. He runs off like a
Senpai will notice me, and flies away.
But Guizhong snaps into action and is like, basically, you're not going anywhere. And he lands a kick to Chai's ribs. But Chai grabs a vase and kind of throws it at him, and that kind of gets him a moment to make an escape. But as this is a really funny, just these next series of events are really funny, because Master Chin yells at Guizhong. He's like, Guizhong, or whatever, and he points at him, and then Guizhong doesn't do anything. He just then yells at Ryu, like, Ryu, you go and press that button. It's just a really funny, like, I'm not gonna do it, you do it. Ryu hits this button, which engages this giant machinery that Chai is standing on, and kind of shakes him loose, and he drops the mirror to the ground, and Ryu dives and catches it before it falls, and Chai runs away. Well, I was going to ask you guys, like, what would have happened if Ryu didn't catch the mirror and it broke? Like, wouldn't that have just solved everything? Like, that would have been like, why don't they just break the mirror right here?
Yeah, problem solved.
Like, why are we keeping this thing that this bad guy wants that can destroy, I don't know, the universe?
It's like those classic edited movies that you see now all the time, where it's like it shows, you know, the main characters of Star Wars getting shot and dying or whatever. And they just instantly goes to credits, George Lucas.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of the scene where in Lord of the Rings, where they're like, you have to take it to Mount Doom to destroy it, because then we can't. But maybe something like that will happen. I don't know.
Yeah, why can't Gandalf just fly and drop it off in the volcano? Who knows? But yeah, like this scene, they also changed it a little bit in sense. I think they expanded it more, because he does jump from the top, does this crazy yelling, takes the mirror, and they do the scene where he presses a button, but they added in an extra detail, I think, with the vase and just more of the action, and the pressing the button and what actually happens looked more visceral and real in the anime. In the game, it just kind of looked like it was slightly creaking and tilting a bit, and then he's like, whoa, and then he drops the mirror. So like it was more believable in this version. So
then there's a really good after they get the Phoenix mirror back, then Chin and Guizhong have a conversation, and it sounds like Master Chin is trying to dissuade Ryu from continuing down this path. And it seems like every person Ryu comes across who knows Iwao tries to get Ryu to not journey into this world and cross, because I think they know once you go in, you can't come back, and it's going to be a very dangerous journey. Master Chin says that the Mad Angels were probably the ones that helped Londi come into Japan, and so Ryu now is like, so I need to go find the Mad Angels, and so I think that basically puts us now on a path into, you know, the next episode. We kind of know where Ryu is going to be going from here. So yeah, what did you guys think of how this episode wrapped up, and kind of where Ryu's going to be going from here?
I mean, thought it was a good episode. Like I said, I think it's moving the story along pretty quickly, so that's good for an anime that has, I think it's 13 episodes, right? Or is it 14? 13 or 14?
13.
You know, at the end of every episode, I'm eager to see the next episode. That's kind of where I left off. Londi heading off by boat to Hong Kong, and knowing that pretty soon Rio is going to be heading after him. It's going to be really interesting to see Shenmue 2 stuff in the anime.
Yeah, I'm genuinely curious. I mean, I guess because Shenmue 1 as a story beat is one chapter versus Shenmue 2 is chapters 3, 4, and 5, if I'm not mistaken. Chapter 2 was a boat scene that they cut out because of development issues and what have you. So I'll be interested. It'll be interesting to see if they include the boat scene in the anime, and it's only episode 3, so there's 10 episodes left, and they're basically like halfway or a little over halfway done with Shenmue 1. So I'm gonna be curious to see how far they go through the rest of season 1. If they finish in 2, or if they even just start going into Shenmue 3, I don't know. But it's interesting to see how the pacing will turn out.
Well, this speaks to my prediction earlier that I said off camera. I should repeat it here so I'm on the record.
Do it.
Get the credit that this anime is going to wrap up right at the end of Shenmue 3, and then they're going to announce Shenmue 4 as a game.
I will believe with you.
Coming to Indiegogo.
On Indiegogo?
I
don't think he'll be doing Kickstarters or anything like that for 4. I honestly don't think so. Just because the rewards and all that kind of stuff, it was always a pain in the ass for anybody, regardless of you know who is making their creation. So yeah, I don't know. I think at that point Sega will either fund it, or you know the people who helped fund Shenmue 3 will find money to, you know, fund 4, or the anime will be successful enough. I don't know how they earn money through the anime. Is it views and then advertising? I don't know, but maybe they'll get enough money for it that way. But we'll see.
Yeah, I like it. That's a very hopeful prediction. And hey,
no, it'll happen. You heard it here first.
Yeah, it's very breaking news. So check that out. So that's gonna wrap up this episode of Talking Shenmue. Again, episode 3 was titled Yin Yang. Episode 4 is what is that? It's going to be called Shackles. So that's kind of an interesting and ominous word right there. It's going to be interesting to see where they go from there. But James, once again, thank you for coming on. But before you go, tell us a little bit more about GGDreamcast. And I saw that you have some new products that you just have been putting out on your store that you came out with, and I'm very excited to talk more about those, and I want to grab some of those. So tell us a little bit about what you got in store for.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me to chat. Always good to talk about Shenmue. But yeah, we just over the last couple of weeks, I've been developing some products to sort of celebrate special things about the Dreamcast, special games, and one thing that I think has always stuck out to me is the VMU, which we all know. I've got one right here. I'll share it. It's the classic Dreamcast memory card with the screen. So just came up with this idea to draw hand-drawn VMU with some of our favorite characters on the screen, and I put them on Twitter, and people seem to like them. So I said, okay, let's make this into some shirts and mugs and stickers, and we put them up in the store, and people have been enjoying them. So I'm thrilled to see them out there. Check them out if you want.
Yeah, I'm looking at your store right now. I love your VMU designs. I love the color style and all that. I'm gonna absolutely buy a mug today.
I appreciate it, because that making them absolutely destroyed my eyes and my hands and my spine. I was just like over the tablet, It was like 3 days of just pixel by pixel. But anyway, yeah, if people are interested, take a look at the store.
Yeah,
that was www.ggdreamcast.com. I believe, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely go check that out. So great. Thanks again, James, for coming on. We definitely have to get you back on the show as the series progresses. It'll be interesting to kind of get your thoughts, a few more episodes in and see, how much, how well the anime is kind of doing with telling the game story and how well you like that.
Yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely. Anytime.
Right. All right. That's going to do it. See you next time.
All right. Thanks.